tell me um, a little bit about how both of you came to work in the cotton mills. Okay?
I didn't work in the
You
cotton
didn't.
mill. I worked at asbestos
He was a
plant.
farmer,
I
Okay.
was raised on the farm till
but he did work in asbestos. That was war work after we were married.
Uh-huh.
kept me from going to the war.
Working in the asbestos plant kept you from going to the war?
Yeah, that was war work.
See, well, you seen uh, men that operated machine guns in the war, and the barrels would get red hot. We made those gloves that they wear airbestos, and they take a red hot barrel, catch it, and unscrew it, and take it out, and put another one in.
Um,
Said that I had some asthma,
uh-huh.
and he didn't think it was good for me to be there
To be where?
working in asbestos.
Uh-huh. Is that where you met?
No,
Oh,
we met in Belmont,
okay.
and I was working in the mill when he met me. I met him through his cousin. She was a friend of mine, and she lived over across the river. She lived on one side of the river, and we lived on the other side. And so he came down to meet me. She wanted me to meet him, and he came down one Sunday afternoon to meet me. And a friend of mine had died, and down at Asheboro on down, you know, good little ways, and I had gone to the funeral, and he didn't get to see me that day, and so whenever uh, Thanksgiving, it was 1930, and when Thanksgiving came around, well, they invited me to go up in the country. He lived in the country, and have lunch and spend the day. And I met him in his backyard, and so well, we liked each other. And when I came home, well, my older brother, 6 years older than me, he didn't want me to date and go with boys. Well, I was 19, 18 or 19 then, and he wanted to pick my friends for me to go with,
Yeah.
you know. If he liked them, well, he wanted me to like them. And so whenever I came back home that night, well, he said, well, did you meet that old boy up there you went to meet? And I said, yes. And I said, I think that's the man of my dreams. And so we started dating, and he had a brother that's 16 months older, and
18 months old.
and they had a T-model Ford, and he would get it one weekend, and his brother would get it the other weekend, and he would come to Belmont at 21 miles, and his mama said he wore out 6 cars before he ever got me, because we went together 5 years before we were married.
5 years. That's the longest courtship I've ever heard of back then.
Well, I had to help my mom and daddy, you know, with the children younger than I were. They were in school. And, you know, you didn't hardly make any money back then.
Now, what were you doing back then for a job?
Well, I worked in, when I met him, I worked in this mercerizing plant where they dyed yarn,
Okay.
and we put it on cones and all like that, you know.
No, but when did you start working? Maybe you could tell me about when you started working
When
in
I
the
started
cotton.
working
Yeah,
in, I was
cotton.
14 years old, and Dad was not making enough of money, you know, to support.
Where did your daddy work?
He worked in the Chronicle Mill in Belmont, and he worked where they carded the yarn, you know. And then I worked. You could go to work when you was 14, and I went to work, and most of it, you know, you didn't have a sit down job. You stood up, and we spooled the yarn.
What year was that when you went to work?
Um, well, I was 14 now, and I was born 19 and 12. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. about 24.
1924.
And we worked 12 hours a day. We didn't, just go work 8 and all. It was just hard work. And I worked many a week for 10 cents an hour, dollar a day. And I learned to do a lot of the different things, spool and wind and reel. And they had different things that they, put the yarn on and everything. And so it was somewhat interesting, and I never did feel bad because uh, we lived on the cotton mill hill, they called it, and cotton mill village, and those people, well, we didn't have anything, but we had love, and we were honest, and we were Christian people, and and we just felt like that we wasn't um, we wasn't poor in everything because we were rich in love, and because we had God, and that made you look forward to the next day and the future. And we loved, our mom and daddy taught us to love each other and keep a good name.
How many of you were there?
Um, well, now, I didn't know the 6 older children. They died, before I ever knew them. My oldest sister died with pneumonia when she was 6 years old, and my oldest brother died when he was 14 months old with membrane croup, or whooping cough, they called it. And the others were just tiny babies. And see, that was before my time.
Did
And
your father always work in the cotton mill? What, did your father always work in the cotton mill?
Yeah, he started in McCaddenville, and my mom and daddy got married in McCaddenville. You know where that is.
Yeah.
And I was born. You have ever been there at Christmas time, have you? Well, they light up over there, and this big lake down there. Well, they have lights and Christmas decorations. It's beautiful. And I was born up on the hill from that lake. And in February the 5th, 1912. And
Now, so your parents, they started working when they were children in the cotton mill?
well, no, my daddy grew up in the mountains in Alexander County, up above Statesville and Taylorsville, and all. He grew up there, and my mother grew up in Lincolnton County. And so my daddy, his daddy died, and there was 7 children, I believe, and he had to take daddy's place, and he had to quit going to school, and he didn't get any education at all because he was older, and he had to help grandma take care of the children, and so he 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 got an offer from his one of his aunts, or his grandmother, that if he would live up there with her, and take care of her place and all, that she would deed it to him. But see, he had to help take care of his brothers and sisters, and so he came down to McCaddenville, and he got a job down there, and he learned how to set the patterns for gingham's cloth. Now, gingham's cloth was it would have all colors in it, and pretty prints, and he fixed the looms, and he set the looms up for those patterns.
Now, how much money did your daddy make when he started, do you know?
Well, he didn't make very much, cause hardly any at all, cause he would go back at night and work.
I've worked a many days for $1.50.
He didn't hardly make anything, but that was uh, the, just anybody couldn't do that. And you know, people worked for him, and he'd show them how to do that, and they'd weave this cloth, you know, just like on a loom, and it'd be in a row, you know, and they'd sell it like they do now.
How many of you and your siblings went to work in the cotton mill?
Um, my sister, my oldest sister, went to work when she was 10 years old. And
Is this the woman who's still alive now?
no, we lost her about 5 years ago, Lacey, and Lucy was here today, and she's 86, and she went to work in the mill. I don't remember what age, but about the same time. And then I had my older brother. Well, he went to work early, and they didn't get to finish high school, and I didn't. I finished the 6th grade, and then I don't think my brother, 2 years younger than me, he died in '75 with cancer. I don't think he got through high school, but
Did he work in the mill too?
yeah,
So you all worked in the cotton mill.
yeah, and then Ruth, my sister, she finished school. She was the first one to finish school. She's 4 years younger than I am. And
Did she work
Lorraine, she finished school. She was here today.
Did Lorraine work in the cotton mill too?
Yeah, she worked. She worked in the cotton mill.
So now, did you work all together in the same department? Did you work all in the same mill?
No, we worked in different mills. I worked in the Chronicle mill. That's the oldest one over there. I worked in there, and then I worked in the National some. And my oldest sister worked down there, her and her husband. And then I worked at the Crescent some, you know, when they needed some help. And then I went to Aberfoyle. And when Aberfoyle was built down there on the river, well, they came in from the north and they built these beautiful little houses. And they just looked like doll houses, and they had bathtubs and some of the others, older ones, well, they just had the commodes, you know, and it was a pretty beautiful little village, and it's pretty yet, but
Did you live there?
it's gone down. Yeah, well, that's where I was living whenever when I met Henry.
And were you living there with your family?
Yeah,
Oh, you all moved over there.
yeah. We all moved when you changed from one mill to the other. You would move.
Now, were you all working in different mills at the same time, or you all would work in the same mill and then move?
Well, sometime when we would be working in one mill, and they would have a shortage of help at the next, well, you know, they would say that they wanted us to come and help them out, but we would still just be living in the same house together.
Now, you had to have a number of people working in a mill in order to get a house, right?
Yeah.
Could you tell me about that?
Well, my daddy had, I believe, Lacey had to go to work in Lucy, and Alfie. I think you had to have at least 3 or 4 working in the house, and you had to have wait your turn if you wanted a bigger house to accommodate your family, and you just had in our bedrooms. Well, we had 2 big beds, and the girls would have a room, and the boys would have a room. You know, we didn't have our own rooms and all, and they put water in the house. I remember when they put water in the house. But now at McKenville, when I was born, Well, they would have to go to the well and draw the water up, and they would have to go down there where that big lake is. That was called Frog Level, and the women would wash their clothes down there.
Did your mama work in the cotton mill too?
Yeah, she
did.
worked when she had an opportunity, because she didn't have very much time because about every 2 years, see, they didn't have anything for birth control and stuff like that. And about every 2 years, there'd be a baby.
So how many babies were there?
She had, my mama had 15.
How many lived?
Well, now, 6 died before my knowledge, and they were 6 girls and 3 boys in our family for years and years.
How wonderful! And everybody worked in the cotton mill. Now, I'm gonna jump a little. How did Roosevelt change your life in the cotton mill?
Well, I remember whenever he became president, and everybody thought that he was, going to do great things, to help people out, and people would dig sewer lines and water lines and all. And I remember when my mother would, it'd be so cold sometimes, and she would make extra coffee, or have extra soup or something, and she would give the men.
These are the men in the CCC camps? The men that were outside digging those ditches?
Yeah, they were outside.
Right.
And
now, what about in the cotton mills itself? Do you remember the NRA?
Yeah.
How did your job change?
Well, they started paying more money, and they cut the hours down, and you didn't have to work 12 hours, and you felt like it was a blessing from heaven that you could work 8 hours and then, have some rest, because people had to get up early. And I remember my mama used to get up, and she would, you didn't have even heat because the houses got cold, and you just had covers that you had to have enough of covers to keep warm and sleep with somebody too, And the girls slept together and the boys slept together, and the little grate fireplace, well, the fire would go out of that, when we'd all go to bed, and the milk would freeze.
So your mama would have to wake up real early?
Yeah, have to get up early, and in the kitchen, well, the water would freeze in the bucket, and the buttermilk would freeze, and she would break ice on that buttermilk to make biscuits, for to have breakfast. And everybody had their cows, and everybody had a hog, and people had chickens, and they the men went out and they hunted quail and rabbits.
Did they need to have the hog and the chickens and the garden?
Yeah, that we had to eat what we had to raise,
What if you didn't have those extra things? What would have happened?
Well, everybody knew they had to have that. And my grandparents lived not too far. Mama's people, we had to walk over to their place or ride in the buggy or the wagon or what. And they lived on the farm, and they had a lot of farming stuff, fruits and stuff like that. But back then, men would come around, and they would have wagons from the country, and my mama used to hold her apron out, and she could buy a dozen of eggs for 10 cents or 5 cents, wasn't it, Henry? And 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 my daddy would go shoot quail, bob whites and rabbits, and Mama would pick those birds and chickens, and uh, we would save those feathers to make feather beds and pillows, and then too, there was a lot of wild greens grew
Right.
out, creasy greens and stuff like that.
So
And
was
Mother would go out and gather those, and we would eat those, and see she would can stuff from the garden.
was this? Did you have to do that because was the paycheck enough from the mill to feed everybody?
No, no, you had to really work to have something extra. And see, back then they were taught if they didn't work, they didn't have anything. They didn't have it. They couldn't eat.
Now, the housing was from the mill, right?
Yeah,
So
if you didn't live in the country, my mama's daddy and mother lived in the country. They had this big old country house.
uh-huh.
But the villages where you worked, well, they they had the houses, and I think I believe the rent was $1.25. Um, for the house.
Now, I've been told by a lot of people that in the mill village, there was someone who made sure all the families kept order and that they were moral. That if you drank, you'd get in trouble and you lose your job.
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah. They used to, if you you had to walk a straight line, and they didn't put up with things that we just thought that was awful. And back then you didn't hear divorce was very uh, seldom heard of, and and we just figured when we got married, well, we married to stay married till death do we part, and of course a lot of couples didn't get a good deal because some of them got a mean wife or a mean husband, and they didn't get along. But see, they didn't issue divorces and all.
Um, this footage is from 1934, and in 1934 in September there was a big strike all over the country. Do you remember that?
Yeah. And I remember there's a strike in Belmont, and one guy got killed, and my brother was in that house whenever that soldier killed him with a bayonet. Wall, my brother, 2 years younger. Well, he these National Guards came out.
Why did they
And
come out?
they were called out because people wanted to go on their jobs, and and some of them didn't want them to go. Some of them didn't want to go back to work because they wanted more money and better conditions. And
Now that's why they were striking, right?
yeah, and so
Do you
my
know,
my brother, he was just more of a spectator up there because it was not too far from where we lived. And whenever they charged, well, these soldiers, charged after the men and all, and my brother hid behind a door, but the soldier killed a guy in that house.
now, do you remember you were working in the mill at the time, right?
I wasn't working at that mill. I was working at another one because this was a hosiery mill.
Uh-huh. Now, what happened at your mill in 1934 during that strike?
Well, some of them some of them wanted to go out on strike, and they had meetings, and they wanted you to join unions and all. And a lot of people hesitated from joining unions because, you could lose your job.
What did you think about it?
Well, I never was in favor of, I, I wanted to see the people have more money, but I didn't want to see them have it through strife. And I felt like that if a company cannot, if they don't make enough of money to pay the help that they have, well, see, that's a burden on them. And if they don't have it, they can't pay it. And Paul tells us in the Bible that we should be satisfied with what we have.
Now, so did people come and try and get you to sign a union card?
They come and they had their union meetings and all but
Where did they have them?
well, they met in different places.
Was it public, or did they have to do it in secret?
Well, the mills knew where and the people knew where it was going to be, and they would meet up over the drugstore in Belmont, I remember. And so it was a sort of a weird thing.
Did you ever go to one of those meetings?
Yeah.
You did. What were those meetings like?
Well, they just had a meeting, and they'd talk about, that we should have more money, and we should have better benefits.
Like what? What kind of benefits?
Well, that we should have more money to buy clothes and things like that, and that we should have well, just better
Better working conditions?
better working conditions.
Were the conditions difficult at the time?
Yeah, they were. You had to work real hard sometimes.
Some people have told me about a stretch out at that time.
Yeah, and they would just put so much. Every once in a while, they'd make a change, and if you got to where you could make production, well, they would raise it, and you would have to meet. You would just have to keep climbing till you reached that production,
Did that happen to you?
And if you didn't, yeah, I've went up on production a lot of times. You had to, and sometimes if you didn't turn off so much, well, they'd just say, well, you won't have a job if you can't do it.
Now, did they do that after you went on 8 hours? When they reduced the hours, is that when they started piling
Well,
on the work?
both times it was really hard.
Now, from what I understand, that's one of the. I know they got more money after the 8 hours.
Yeah.
So you think if they got more money, why did they strike? That's something that we're trying to understand.
Well, you had some fools, and that you couldn't please them no way. If you give them more money, they still would want more.
And they was they was some slave labors. You couldn't do enough to satisfy them.
Now, is that why you think the union came in? Because of that?
Well, I think the union came in, it come mostly from the north, didn't it, Henry?
No, it started in Russia.
I know it started in Russia, but I believe they started up north, with the unions and coming south. And people wanted to make more money because they could dress better and they could eat better and they could have more. They didn't have luxuries. You know, we didn't have a little old television till a few years before I was married, because I remember Mama, she loved to hear Ma Perkins when she come on.
Maybe you mean a radio.
A little radio, yeah.
Now, did a lot of the folks from your cotton mill join up?
No, not too many. And the ones that did, well, they didn't want to talk about it. You know, they wanted to keep it more to themselves, because it's afraid they'd lose their jobs.
But then they called this big national strike in
Yeah.
September, and cotton mills all over the country walked out. What
Yeah.
happened at your mill?
Well, some of them went and some of them stayed. You know, and they would call them scabs if they went on in their jobs, and they hated you if you went on in. If you had to work and you went in on that job, well, they didn't want you to, and they'd really get angry.
What did you do?
Well, I had to go to work.
So did you have to walk through that picket line?
Yeah, you had to walk to get through.
That must have been difficult.
It was, and you know, people had. You was afraid that, well, you didn't have a job if you didn't go on it, and you afraid of what might happen to you if you know, stayed at home, and if you didn't work, you didn't have money.
No, but some of those people chose to join the union and to be on picket,
Yeah, and
right?
fight, and this.
Do you think, if they knew that they could lose their job, why do you think they chose to join up?
Well, they just do like a lot of these people now. They just made up their mind that if they lost their job, that they'd blackball you back in that day. You've heard of blackballing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they knew you joined the union, they'd blackball you, and none of the mills wouldn't hire you.
Do you know people that happened to?
Well, I used to know. I think wasn't my brother.
Elvie, I think
My brother, my oldest brother. I think he joined the union, and he likely never got him a job, but he finally got in hosiery work.
Is he still alive?
No, he died in '78. All three of my brothers is gone.
Now your brother was the one who saw that man get.
Yeah, the one next to me.
So you were there too.
No, I wasn't. He was next to me, 2 years.
Oh,
different.
In the house.
No, I wasn't up there, because you know, not many people went out because they didn't know what those guards were going to do, and they had bayonets, and so Wallace went up there, and they let us stand around on the streets, you know, and listen and just see, you know, this curiosity.
Yeah. Now, those union meetings that you went to, that was the UTW, right?
Yeah.
I wonder, I have a picture I'm going to show you in just a little while of a man that I think was one of the organizers. Maybe you recognize him. The first thing I'm going to show you is Labor Day parade in Gastonia. Did you ever go to something like that?
Well, it's been so long, I don't remember whether I went to.
Because they have pictures of, you'll see people walking from a UTW local, that I imagine is either from Gastonia or from Belmont. Would people from Belmont come to a parade in Gastonia?
Yeah.
On Main Street? Well, let's look at this and let's see. Now, if you see anybody that you recognize, I know it's small, I'm sorry. Let me know. That says UTW Local 2121.
Well, I'm sure I know some of them people,
There.
cause there's a lot of people I knew got into the union, cause they said that was the only way that people were going to ever be better off.
Now, this is a man. Let me ask you a question. Are any of those people that joined the union then, did they go out on strike? Those people that you're talking about?
Yeah,
They must have taken a lot of courage, I guess.
yeah.
Do you think so?
You risk your job and being blackballed, and you know if they blackballed you, well, nobody wanted you because they said if union come there, well, you know that you'd cause trouble there.
Now, were those people, how did they feel about this national strike happening all over the country? Were they excited about it?
Well, some people were because they thought they were going to be better off, but most of the Christian people, I think, didn't feel like that about it because they thought that things was going to be, you know, worse if they got in there and pushed things. You know, a drastic change like that sometimes hurts more than it helps.
Yeah.
You know, I belong to the Masons, and if you know, if a man wanted to join the Masons, you know, and he was a crook, you know, like that anyway, somebody, you know, when they voted, you know, they come and send it around, you know, and they have black balls and the other kind of balls, white balls.
White.
You know, and then you blackballed, if you didn't want him, you put a black ball in there and he wouldn't get no more.
But you know, they'd put your name on a list. They didn't do that by balance, you know, like the lodges do, but they'd put your name on the list, and if your name was on the list, well, they'd make it hard for you.
Now, did they make it public whose names were on the lists?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they would know.
Did you know whose name were on the list too?
Well, yeah, I knew a lot of men and women too that had their name on the list, but they were just taking a chance.
So were some of those people from your town in Belmont?
Yeah,
And were some from Gastonia too?
yeah.
Did they all go to the same meetings together, or were they mixed, the meetings?
Well, Belmont, you know, back then you didn't have much transportation. And mostly Belmont had their meetings, and mostly Gastonia and other places, you know, would get together because, you know, a lot of these were walking distances, you know.
Right.
The mills was close together.
Did you ever hear of a man named Albert Hinson?
Well, that sounds familiar.
Okay, well, we have a picture of him right here, so let's see.
Well, was he from Belmont or?
I don't know. This is outside the Parkdale Mills.
And the laboring people at the Parkdale Mill.
The Parkdale.
We come over here this morning
Where is
to
Park?
help you get a better condition
In Gastonia.
with us at the Small Manufacturing Company, which is one of the same chain of mills as the Parkdale. There's a few of you people here that belongs to this organization, and we want you to join and set you up a union local here. I know you can have a good union local.
Do you know him? No.
I don't.
Just talk with the superintendent. He first wanted us to wait till 2 o'clock to stop off I come out here, put it to a vote, and the people voted 100% to stop off now.
Does he look familiar now? He does look familiar?
I don't know him.
I
Oh.
went back in another conference with the superintendent, and he asked me how long.
Well, you know, people were afraid. There was a lot of fear and during that time.
Take care of the roller because we want to work again.
You know,
And we
in
want better conditions when we
Gastonia,
work again.
The flying squadrons?
The flying squadrons. A little bit about that.
Yeah. Let me pause that. What can you tell me about that?
Really not. I don't remember too much about it.
Did they ever come to Belmont like that?
If they did, I don't remember. What year was that?
That was the same period of time. You know, a group of strikers would go from one mill in a car, and then they go over to the next mill.
Yeah, well, I remember when they used to do that.
That yeah. Oh, you
Yeah,
do. Oh,
yeah.
you do. Did that happen in Belmont?
Yeah, I think so. Because they were wanting members.
I remember the strike in Charlotte.
You do.
Yeah,
Were you here then?
yeah, I was, I wasn't down there, but,
You was a
It-
spectator.
yeah, I went down there one time, and,
During 1934.
yeah, and there was streetcars, and knocked the windows out of throwing rocks at the streetcar.
There goes a cow.
It was a cow.
Yeah.
This is outside the Parkdale.
They'd fight and everything else.
That's how come the government sent those guards to Belmont, you know, because people was wanting to go on their jobs. They had to make money to keep up their family, and they wanted to cross that picket line to go in, and they didn't know whether they was going to get killed or not.
So when you crossed the picket line, did you have to go past some of your friends?
Yeah, everybody knew you.
So you knew people that were on the Union side that were standing there.
Yeah, and they'd say, don't go, don't go. And they'd, call you a scab. That's what they called them. And they'd get real mad 'cause you'd go.
And what did your sisters do?
Well, I don't remember too much about them. I really don't remember too much about all that. But, after we would get home and we would sit around the fire after, we had supper, and we would talk about all these things,
Yeah.
and talk about how different people felt about it, and what was the Christian way, to do about it. And it was something to think about because you knew you had to endure a lot if it won, and if they thought if they got it, well, you was just they didn't want you if you didn't stand with them.
You think so?
Yeah, 'cause you didn't help accomplish it, and if anything was made better, well, they'd say, well, who done it? You didn't do it. You didn't get your credits,
You were going to say something.
She was talking, and I forgot what I was going to say.
You forgot. Yeah, they didn't want to have much to do with you.
Afterwards?
Yeah.
Do you know any of those people? Are any of them still living in Belmont?
Well, there's so many people died off, and I'm so much older, too, you know. I'm 78. And you know, after you get that age, well, you really can't remember. Your memory's not as clear as it used to be, and things don't come to you as easy.
When any of those strikers were outside on the picket line, how did they get food? Do you know? Was anyone helping take care of them?
Well, they'd go home and eat. They'd go home and get something to eat and come back.
So they were there a lot, all the time?
Yeah, and you know, a lot of them didn't have big families like most, like, you know, my daddy and mama. Some of them, you know, had several children, but they didn't have a huge big family.
I guess maybe that's one reason why they took the risk.
Yeah.
Maybe. Should I keep on going with this? Maybe we'll see something we know. I also have some pictures of Charlotte during the strike, which maybe it'll be a nice memory for you to see that.
They're showing streetcars.
But this isn't Charlotte. This is still Gastonia.
Gastonia.
Yeah. This is still Parkdale. Did you hear what he said? We're heading for Dallas.
Yeah. In Dallas, another place where they had got cotton mills.
It was a terrible time.
Talking man, and he's a fine man. I found him that way. He don't want to do nothing wrong.
Look at all the young people. I don't know if they're members or they're just watching or they all came out of work.
Well, you know, young people had to go to work too and work. Some of them worked and then went to school.
Yeah, I know what I was going to tell you a while ago.
Oh, okay.
I worked on the road, Roosevelt, you know, past the law to the counties, you know, where they could make sand clay roads.
Uh-huh.
And we drove, me and my brother would drive.
A lot of them have died and passed on.
Well, I'm going to go to Belmont tomorrow.
You are?
Yeah. So it would be, I'd love to show this to somebody there. You know, maybe they would.
Lorraine would love to see that and talk about it.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll definitely show it to her. I'll get my business.
Already lives have been lost and many wounded. At the first reports of bloodshed in the Carolinas and
Well,
Georgia,
this is a
President
newsreel.
Roosevelt appointed a special mediation board in an effort to end growing disorder.
Police got it.
Can I have one?
Sure.
Mass meetings and strike
You want
hours
something
to
cold to
ban the
drink?
flame.
I got some tea and Coke.
In this country here, that's what
The kids, we keep it mostly for the kids. Get all you want.
I just want one.
a mile of mills lie idle and low.
Would
you like a cookie?
No,
Crowding the streets.
This is what's happening in New England at the same time. It says Labor Day, observe it. That's the Firestone Mill.
The Firestone.
Yeah.
they might remember a lot more about that than I do.
Do you think she would have gone on something like this?
I don't
Do you
think.
have to wear uniforms like that?
No, you just wore what you had, I think.
Do any of those women look familiar? Oh, let's see.
We didn't get out of our communities very much.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking that maybe some of this, that maybe they put together pictures from different places, and when they put it down in the notes, here we go.
Those are the plainest ones, but I don't.
I'm gonna just fast forward a little bit. Okay. Let's see.
Isn't it?
Now, I don't know, do you recognize, this is outside a mill, I'm not sure which one. You think so?
And you know, history repeats itself down through the Bible. Yeah, really.
Was this the big battle of your generation?
Well, it was a pretty big one.
Were the young people excited? Did they feel like they were going to be able to change something?
Well, they were hoping for better times, but they knew that there was a long ways off.
You know, did you ever hear the joke about the colored man and the white man talking about Christ?
No.
He said, the white man said that Jesus Christ was a white man, and the black man said he was a black man. And they was arguing about it, you know. And after they argued a good while, the black man said to the white man, said, how do you know he was a white man? Well, you know, he wrote it to Moses, you know, talking to Moses. He said, I am what I am. You know, that's in the Bible. And what he told Moses. And he says, it's plain as the nose on your face. He said, if he'd have been a black man, he said, I is what I is.
That's funny. That's funny. Although, maybe the question is not who said it, but who wrote it, right?
Yeah.
He might have said, I is what I is, and a white man was writing it, and he corrected his grammar.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
that's the way they talk, you know.
That's right. That's right. Just so I can get it straight, you could tell me which mill it was and how and what happened.
That was a Majestic, wasn't it, Henry? No, that was,
It's up there where Lacey lived.
he was killed in one of those Majestic houses, but that was Belmont Knitting Hosiery in East Belmont. And they had, that was one of the later mills that had been built, you know. And so they,
The National Guard was out?
yeah, they sent the National Guard out because, you know, a lot of them was wanting to join the Union, and and the others didn't want them to join. And see, they were trying to keep them from going in on their jobs, and they had a lot of confusion and trouble going, and so they called out the National Guard, you know, and to keep peace. And so I don't remember just what was taking place, but anyway, they got
Going nothing.
somebody said something. Somebody said something and got things to going, you know, and so the National Guard charged after in the crowd, and see this. They all started running in this house across the street, and it was 2 stories, and they just went upstairs and everywhere, and my brother, he hid behind the door, one of the doors, but the National Guard killed him with this bayonet.
Right in the house, not even out in front of the mill?
No, he was in the house because he charged him, he was after him.
When he attacked him.
Yeah.
And all these people that were out there striking, they were local people or they were from other mills?
They were local.
They were local.
Yeah.
And did any of them get to keep their jobs and go back to their jobs, or were they all blacklisted?
Well, some of them was blacklisted, and it was a really trying time because some of them, you know, didn't. They left and got other jobs and all because they knew that they wouldn't be able to get their jobs back there.
And are there any of those people that still live anywhere around here that I might be able to go talk with?
No, because I can't remember anybody now. My sister, my oldest sister, she can tell you this one. She'll be home. She goes to the beauty shop uptown, and her daughter comes down there for lunch, and she takes her up to the beauty shop about 11.
On Fridays.
And she stays up there. Her daughter works there, Brenda Beatty. She's a beautician, and she stays up there till some of them comes by and takes her home. And sometimes it's over in the afternoon. And then she's at home most of the time from then till about 9 o'clock at night, and her daughter in Mount Holly comes and gets her and takes her because she's afraid to stay by herself at night. And she's Doug's brother.
Mother.
Yeah, mother. And she might still know somebody over there that lives on there before that could tell you a lot more than I do.
Now, Doug is a barber?
Yeah.
Okay.
And his barber shop is right up the street from where Lucy lives.
Okay.
On the other side as you going uptown.
Okay.
You know, it's right across the river.
From, it's just right across the river from Gastonia.
You know, as you go back, how do you go? You go 80